I just wanted to talk through my journey through putting guardrails around image generation. And to do this, I wanted to constrain it to a very particular problem. So the particular problem is the 4-panel comic generation, and this pops up in a variety of different scenarios. Um, for example, Japanese manga have this form typically in comedic kind of comics, but also it appears in the Western side. So, for example, Garfield, Calvin and Hobbes make use of this kind of like 4-panel kind of approach. By having this kind of restriction, this makes it easier to set up what we need to do to build up a comic strip. The other restriction was I focused on 8-bit pixel art with a single character that was focused on the pose that the character will have. I think by having this simplifies things like to do with like color maps and also the type of generation. We're not going to generate multiple characters per generation. It will just be one character focused on one particular pose. The other thing is I avoided generating the actual dialogue. The dialogue will be there, but it won't be generated as part of the image generation. Instead, it will just be placed floating on top, and this is like very similar to XKCD. This simply just makes the whole process easier. That's the primary purpose, and it just removes that need to add guardrails around that side of things. So then the actual generation, how do we control for it? Well, we have our image to image workflow. So we're going to use image to image. So we have our base image, and then we have our pose that we're going to constrain it with. And this ensures that at a high level, it will be the same. And then of course, there'll be prompting where we have the pose that we have. We may have negative prompts, we may have the background, and we may have what the character is doing. By having this and then having a subsequent like judge to check this, this ensures that we can retry and then also understand where the generation fails. In my particular case, we can use the Flux model, we can use the Z-Image Turbo models, and then perhaps use any kind of like small LLM with a vision capability like the Gemma model or the Quen model that can go and check whether this is appropriate, or we can add rules such as how different are the colors between the base image and then the newly generated image. Are they roughly the same or different, to determine whether it is coherent. So by doing this allows us to create a coherent comic strip. So then if we put it together, what does it sort of look like? So for example, when you can see that we have like a clean typography, because the typography is added after the fact. It's not part of the generation. And you can change the typography and reuse the different poses if you so desire. That's the other advantage. There's like a level of coherence. And by having this kind of anchoring with like what the image to image workflow looks like, it means that these particular elements will persist from one frame to the next, as we can see in all of these examples. Having these restrictions will also allow us to have a way for how we can tell a story that is coherent when we move from frame to frame as well, which is what this kind of like four panel comic strip setup will allow us to do. So this is just a quick demonstration, and I've had various success with it, which I'll show you briefly. And I think that this is the way for how we can think about not only for image generation or coding agents, but just any kind of LLM or AI that uses generative AI, how we can evaluate and how we can test it out. You start with a small, simple example that is pretty constrained, and you build it out. Too often, I think people try to do too much with it, and then if it becomes very difficult to scale back. It's much easier to start from a small place and then build it up. So let's look at some examples. So on screen, we have 3 different examples for how we can come up with a particular scene with different characters, and also shows the different poses and how they change from one frame to the next. And you can see that they are coherent, they have the same expression, they have the same complexion, they have the same they have the same accessories and clothing. And you don't have like two different cats that are generated in two different ways, nor do you have characters that wear different kind of clothing. But here you can see that it is consistently being generated, even down to the particular features that they may have, such as the ears, or such as the ears, or like the bow that they may have, and yeah, this shows the power of having these guardrails and the ability to build them up incrementally. And overall, I think that this small test was a success. The real proof is how can we build on top of this? How can we make it more complicated? So for example, in a single frame, what if there are multiple people, and what if there are multiple speaking things, or multiple points in the story that we need to express? What might that look like? And I think that's a task for the next one.